I would like to take this opportunity to say that I do not recognize Teddy's sister as a family member. She is a high school graduate and does not deserve to be a part of our family, all of whom are highly educated.
Today is my brother's wedding day. On such a happy and joyous occasion, the dad of the bride made this comment in his speech. Not only that, of course, our mom is there too. He said that we are a single-parent family without a father, lacking in love and not functioning well. He made fun of me in a loud voice over the microphone. I managed to suppress my boiling frustration at the bride's father, who was being so rude and rambling on and on. Then, suddenly, my brother stood up. He smiled at the bride's dad and said those words, and the air in the hall froze. "Teddy, I'm sorry I didn't answer the phone earlier. What's wrong?" I checked the phone while I was at work to see if I had an incoming call from my brother Teddy, and I called him back as soon as I finished work. I was happy to hear Teddy's voice, sounding a little embarrassed on the other end of the phone.
Hey, Kate. Long time no see. I called you at work earlier, didn't I? Sorry. Actually, Anna and I are getting married, so I was wondering if you'd like to come to the wedding.
Of course I'm coming, no matter what. I laughed.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Teddy laughed too. We talked a little about what we've been up to and hung up the phone. I slowly closed my eyes, and the old memories came back to me. My name is Kate Brown. I work as a caregiver and support my frail mother. When I was younger, we were a family of 4, including my dad and my younger brother Teddy. In such a family, my dad was the man of my dreams. My dad was always busy working as a firefighter, so he didn't have many days to rest and relax at home. I sometimes felt lonely comparing myself with my neighborhood friends, who often played with their fathers. My dad always told us,
I'm proud of my job because I can help people.
I would hear him say that with a happy smile. I just thought, One day, something happened that changed my worldview. It happened when I was walking outside with my family to go to the park. I was talking to my dad on the sidewalk with cars passing by. Suddenly, his eyes changed, and he turned to Mom and Teddy, who were walking behind him, and spoke to them in a loud voice. And then, he ran away from them. I was so stunned that my mom and Teddy rushed to my side. When I calmed down and looked for my dad, I found him a little further down the road beside an old man who was crouching down in agony. He quickly assessed his condition and skillfully got him into a comfortable position. Then, quickly pulled out his cell phone and called an ambulance. Thanks to my dad's quick rescue, that grandpa was discharged from the hospital without any after effects. He then held my dad's hand with tears streaming down his face and repeatedly said thank you. Dad scratched his head in embarrassment as Grandpa thanked him again and again. After that image of my father's resilience has been burned in my mind for a long time and has never left. From that moment on, I became truly proud of my dad's work. Dad?
What is it?
Dad, I will become a fine adult who can help someone like you. One day, I suddenly said this out loud, and my dad looked very surprised. He immediately relaxed his expression and nodded with a kind look in his eyes. Time passed, and when I was in the 5th grade, an incident occurred that would remain etched in my memory for the rest of my life. While I was talking with my friends in the classroom during lunch break, a teacher came running up to us, looking as white as a ghost. The teacher took me to her car, and to my surprise, my younger brother was also in the car. When I was puzzled, the teacher immediately started the engine of the car and started driving somewhere. He told us that our dad had been taken to the hospital, At that time, I couldn't understand what the teacher was saying and was staring at the view out the window from the car. When we arrived at the hospital, our mom, looking pale and tearful, greeted us. She explained to us that Dad was currently undergoing emergency surgery. When I saw the words "surgery in progress" glowing red above the ICU, I finally realized that it was real. We had not been told at the time. My dad was on his way to a fire he had been called to. He had tried to rescue a child who was left inside the house and had suffered severe burns. The surgery lasted for hours. We waited in silence, just praying for my dad's safe return. Eventually, the operating light went out, and we stared at the door of the room nervously. The doctor, who must have been in charge of my father, came out and said with a difficult look on his face,
"The operation has been completed, but the situation is still unpredictable."
My brother and I did not understand the meaning of those words at the time. Anyway, the doctor told us that the surgery was over, so we thought without a doubt that we would be able to talk to our dad again when morning came. However, we never spoke to our dad again. That night, a while after the surgery, he passed away. In a room filled with the sound of machines and the sobbing of grief, I went up to my dad, who was lying on his side, and held his hand, calling out to him again and again. But he never answered me. My mom gently gave me a shoulder hug with tears streaming down her cheeks. Many people attended my dad's funeral. Even now, when I think back on it, I still can't believe that so many people showed up, even though it was so sudden. I think that my dad was really loved. My dad was a cheerful and kind person who was loved by everyone, not only in the family but also at work. I held Teddy's small hand as he cried, trying my best to hold back the tears that were trying to stream down my face. I promised my dad that I would become a good person who could help others and that I would protect my family. After that, the rest of our family lived supporting each other. My mom had been working part-time at a dry cleaning company since my dad was still alive. She was frail by nature and had difficulty working long hours, so life became increasingly difficult for her. Even so, I tried to keep a smile on my face because I knew I couldn't let the family atmosphere darken. Or maybe it was because I felt like my heart would break if I didn't do so. Then, when I was in the third year of junior high school, even though I was living on the edge, I started to enjoy my life. One day, at a parent-teacher conference, my mom, my teacher, and I discussed my career path. Not to brag, but my grades were good. My mom was happy to hear that my grades were good enough to go to the top school in the state. She also told me that if I wanted to go on to higher education, I should aim for the top. But I had no intention of going to college at all. I told her that I was going to work as soon as I graduated from high school. The teacher and my mom were both so surprised that they just stared at me in amazement. From then on, when we talked about career paths, it often turned into an argument.
"I'm glad you want to protect our family. I understand your kindness, but it's not too late for you to go to college. You're still in high school. You don't have to think about anything else. For the sake of our family, please go to college. Money can come later."
You don't get it. You must know that we're barely making ends meet, right? We still and also have to pay for Teddy's education. The sooner those who can work earn money, the sooner everyone will be able to live comfortably. Why don't you understand that this is how I can protect my family and what I want to do? Teddy happened to be coming home from school at that moment. He came into our exchange apologetically.
"I'm sorry I eavesdropped, but you're getting good grades, right? You should go to college, or else it'll be such a waste." You know the difference between a high school graduate and a college graduate in terms of where you can work and how much money you can earn, don't you? You don't have to think about me."
He took my mother's side. That was the first time I shouted at my brother. That was the end of our discussion that day. It was the same thing over and over again, but that did not shake my determination to work after high school and to protect this family that my dad had protected. One winter day, when our family was still divided, the application deadline for the college that my teacher had suggested was just around the corner. But it was none of my business. I'm not wrong. I came home to find my mom lying in the kitchen. For a moment, I was in total darkness. But then I remembered the image of my dad rushing to the aid of the grandpa who was in pain that day. I ran to my mom and called out to her just as my dad had done. She was in pain, but she was conscious. Mom was rushed to the ambulance. They diagnosed that she was suffering from a chronic disease caused by overwork and stress, and she was going to be hospitalized for a few days. Teddy also rushed to the hospital. He was in tears when he saw Mom, who was already conscious at the time, slowly waving her hand to him. But I didn't calm down one bit. I was convinced that I was the one who had pushed her into a corner mentally. Then Mom seemed reluctant to say it. She wanted me to go to college, so she told me that she had finally been working part-time more often. See, it was all my fault after all. I was so sorry that my heart was filled with pain. Before I could apologize, my mom smiled and interrupted me.
"I lost. You saved me today, didn't you? I felt like you were his image. I clearly see your desire to protect our family. I should have known better. I'm sorry. From now on, will you protect our family with me?"
She smiled at me, and I couldn't stop crying. "Thank you for listening to my selfishness, Mom. I'm sorry I put you through such a hard time." I turned to Teddy, who was standing next to me, and told him, "I also thought about what you've said. It's true that a high school graduate and a college graduate can't compare in salary and job opportunities. But I'll protect you and Mom. You should study hard for me too. And one day, we will take care of Mom together."
"Got it. I'll be smarter than you, and I'll be able to protect you and Mom too."
With tears in our eyes, we promised each other that we would protect our family together. After graduating from high school, I went to work at the nursing home that my teacher had introduced me to. And Teddy, as if to fulfill his promise to me, he always got the first place in his grade and tests. He graduated from the top high school in the state. He was accepted into a prestigious university's medical school and started living on his own. Mom and I were left to ourselves. I feel a little sad now that the noisy one is gone. Just kidding. We lived our peaceful life. Teddy became a doctor and now works at a university hospital. He's so busy that he doesn't come home often. But the other day, when he came home for the first time in a while, he told me that he had decided to become a doctor.
The reason I decided to become a doctor is I started reading medical books when I was in junior high school to help Mom to live a little healthier.
Mom was smiling with happiness, and tears were quietly welling up in her eyes. Teddy, who was so small, finally got married. I went home with a deeply moved heart and opened the front door. Then, my mom came to me in a hurry and told me about Teddy's marriage. I smiled back at her and said, "I just got a phone call too." Teddy was marrying Anna, whom he met in college. He showed me her photo once. "She's very beautiful. She seems to be thoughtful," I said.
"She's strong-willed and, well, dependable."
I remember I was blown away by her smile. When I came out of the bath, my mom was cooking dinner while humming. She was in a good mood. There were hard times when my dad passed away and our family was torn apart. At the time, I never thought that a happy day like this would ever come. But I am glad that we have worked together as a family. I was grateful from the bottom of my heart. And then came the long-awaited wedding day of Teddy. I couldn't arrange time to meet Anna's family in advance, so the wedding day was the first time I got to meet them. I asked them what kind of people they were.
They are very nice people. I'm sure they'll get along well with both of you.
That was Teddy's reply. We arrived at the wedding venue with my mother, dressed in our finest clothes, feeling very nervous. As soon as we were shown to the groom's waiting room, a man approached us. It was Anna's father, Ken, who approached us smilingly and amiably. I hurriedly greeted him as Teddy's sister, and my mom followed suit. We talked for a while, and I was relieved to see that he was as nice as Teddy said he was. But then, Ken asked me which university I graduated from. I started working right after I graduated from high school. I felt he looked at me suspiciously for a moment. I couldn't get rid of that feeling. After a while, Teddy and Anna's wedding ceremony started. After the ceremony, we moved on to the reception. I was enjoying the meal with my mom, as I was amazed by the fancy food which I had never eaten before. Ken's speech as a representative of the family started. Teddy had asked me to give a speech on his behalf, and even though I had been practicing for a week, I was quite nervous. It was when I was looking at Ken with respect, he stood and spoke in front of everyone with an air of dignity.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for gathering here today. This is the time when I would normally greet everyone properly, but I don't want it to be too late, so I will say it here. I do not recognize Teddy's sister, Kate, as family. She is a high school graduate and does not deserve to be a part of our family, all of whom are highly educated. I am ashamed to think that such a person would be a member of our family. Their dad died in a fire. I sympathize with them about that. But if you think about it, it means that the family lacks a father's love. Teddy is a wonderful person who has managed to get out of that home by himself. But what about his sister, who continues to stay in such a home? That's insane.
I did not immediately understand what Ken was saying. It seemed that my mom was the same way, frozen with her eyes wide open. Is it really acceptable to suddenly be called out in front of such a large audience? And that's not all. To blabber about how our family was a single parent without a father, a family that lacked love and was not functioning well. Even when the groom's mother was there too, there was no way I could allow such a thing to happen. I realized the meaning of Ken's discomfort that I felt in the waiting room. I managed to suppress my irritation at the bride's father, who continued to talk incessantly and rudely. But finally, I couldn't take it any longer and was about to get up from my seat when Teddy saw me and stopped me.
Ken, excuse me for interrupting. You can't tell me that a man as capable as you doesn't know who my sister is, right? Just to be sure, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Teddy smiled at Ken, who was upset by Teddy's sudden question, and continued.
My sister is an engineer in the field of AI robots for nursing care. Many of the products she developed are being used in the field of nursing care. I'm sure your company had something to do with it too.
The audience began to buzz at Teddy's words. One of the relatives on the bride's side, who had apparently looked me up on his phone, said, "It's true," and all eyes were on me at once. In fact, I have been a caregiver ever since I started working as a caregiver. I have seen many caregivers leave the industry in the middle of their careers due to physical problems like leg pain and backache. I began to think vaguely that it would be great if both caregivers and care receivers could enjoy their lives more happily and live healthier in body and mind than they do now. While studying in my spare time from work, I was finally able to develop an AI robot to assist caregivers. It has not yet been fully put into practical use, and we are still in the stage of trial operation at the nursing home where I work. I happened to be interviewed on TV, and after the video was aired on social networking sites, I started to attract attention from all over the world. Since then, several companies have expressed an interest in using the robot I developed. And apparently, according to Teddy, the company that Ken works for is one of the companies that has made me an offer. As I stood there stunned, Ken rushed up to me, probably thinking I was angry with him.
I'm very sorry for the rudeness I showed you earlier.
He apologized again and again. As my mom and I looked at each other in confusion, Anna quickly stepped forward and said, "The ceremony will be cancelled. I apologize for the trouble my dad has caused you." No one could resist Anna's attitude and words. The wedding ceremony was cancelled as it was. After that, Ken continued to apologize, even going out of his way to come to my office. However, it was very difficult for me to trust him because of what he said in his speech. I decided not to sell the service robot to the company where Ken works. When I called the company where Ken works and told them that I would not sell the robot to them, I was told that he had been fired from the company because of what he did. Teddy came to our house to tell me that he and Anna had tied the knot. "Are you okay with the relationship with Anna and her relatives?" I asked him. Teddy said,
Her dad has nothing to do with us anymore.
He said, Anna had always disliked her father's obsession with education and titles, and I was just glad that it gave me a chance to cut ties with him. She thanked me. I apologized for ruining the wedding, and Teddy said,
Don't apologize, Kate. It's me who should be apologizing. I'm sorry.
He smiled at me. I turned to Anna and saw that she was smiling as well. I felt as if the haze that had been hanging over my heart had finally dissipated. Time passed. I began to sell robots, and in consultation with a local factory, I built my own laboratory. While working in the field of nursing care, I spent my days improving the robot to make it more suitable for the field of nursing care. Then, one day, Anna suddenly came to my laboratory. She rushed to me as soon as she saw me. Kate, if you don't have someone you like or aren't dating right now, there is someone I want you to meet. He's a friend of mine from my college days. He said he wanted to meet you, Kate. The conversation came out of nowhere and surprised me. But I was not so sure about it. But Anna didn't back down at all. I'd be glad for you to meet him, even just once. Anna's enthusiasm was so strong that I was convinced and ended up meeting with her. I went to the meeting place at the time Anna told me, and there was a quiet-looking man standing, looking like he was waiting for someone. He looked like that guy. Our eyes met, and we confirmed each other's names. At any rate, I knew that this was definitely the man that Anna had introduced me to. A moment of silence passed for a while. Would you like to have a cup of coffee there? He nodded, and I felt a little relieved. We took our seats, and after the hot coffee we both ordered arrived, I decided to ask him why he wanted to see me. Rick looked as if he was about to start crying and slowly began to speak.
When I was little, I was in a fire, and your dad saved my life. Recently, I learned from my mom that the firefighter who saved me at that time had died as a result of injuries sustained while rescuing me. I know it's not something that can be helped by meeting them, but after I heard what Anna and Teddy told me, I couldn't stand still.
As Rick squeezed out those words, I said to him, Please don't cry. I said, My dad will be sad if you cry. I smiled at him and he smiled at me.
I also wanted to become a doctor because I want to save someone with my own hands. I am still a trainee, but I will surely become a great doctor and save as many lives as possible with this life that your dad protected."
He looked so strong and tough that I cried. 2 years later, after a year and a half of dating, we got married. And this past spring, I found out that I was carrying a baby in my belly. I rubbed my belly, which was still just beginning to swell a little. I decided that one day I would build a family to carry on the love that my mom and dad had given me and my brother.